Massachusetts has definitely earned the reputation for being quite active and closely monitoring their public construction projects. So I would say for general contractors to treat their prevailing wage projects like a project management task rather than a payroll function.
Welcome to the Prevailing Wage Report, where we promise it's certified. I'm your host, Mark Van Auken, and I'm joined by Heather Torretta, owner of Prevailing Wage Consulting. Before we dive in, if you like the podcast, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube or on your preferred podcasting platform. So, Heather, Massachusetts has a very active public construction sector. What compliance in New England, and specifically Massachusetts, are a unique challenge for general contractors?
Sure. So Massachusetts has a very mature and heavily regulated public construction market. And so there are very specific tasks and issues that need to be addressed straight away. For example, knowing where the money comes from is important because it dictates what's required as far as the reporting goes. If a contractor goes with the assumption of it's similar to federal certified payroll requirements that along the lines of, say, the Davis-Bacon Act, they're going to struggle with compliance in Massachusetts.
So let's set the baseline for our listeners. How does the Massachusetts prevailing wage law, which is overseen by the Department of Labor Standards, operate differently from standard federal laws?
Sure. So one of the most common frustrations that's different between the federal and the state would be how the wage determinations are created. At the federal level, they are based on construction type as well as locality, such as the county. Such as with Massachusetts, it's much more specific to the project and the location. So you have to be more deliberate with your wage determinations in Massachusetts when you're working on a state-funded project rather than just a federally funded project.
That makes sense. So then in Massachusetts, getting the correct wage sheet for a specific project is absolutely crucial. What are some of the biggest mistakes contractors can make during the bidding process regarding these localized rates?
Incorrect wage sheets, that's a big one. The differences between what you call a certain person, such as the definition of a carpenter in one county is quite different than in a different county within the state, as well as between a lot of the other trade classifications. There are specific trade classifications that are unique to Massachusetts that do not show up at the federal level wage determinations. That's a big one. So you can't assume the trade classes based on the federal trade classification list. And finding the basic hourly rate. It may seem simple. However, there are extra nuances that have to be taken into account in the state of Massachusetts. You can't just go with the federal trade classes and hourly rates and say, this is good. It's more involved and more heavily regulated. So, yeah.
That doesn't make sense. And just to remind everybody who is watching and listening, if you're enjoying the conversation and you want to stay up to date on prevailing wage compliance, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube or on your preferred podcasting platform. So then, Heather, from building construction to public works, the classifications can shift. Where do you see teams struggling the most with assigning the right labor classes in Massachusetts?
I would say job titles. Just because you have one job title of plumber doesn't mean that the tasks that you're performing that day falls under the plumber trade classification. So just because someone is carrying a job title of whatever, that doesn't mean the assumption is their pay should reflect that. Their pay should actually reflect what they're doing on site. And they could be doing plumbing tasks, but they could also be doing other tasks for other trade classifications. I would say that's probably the biggest frustration. And a project project A can be in one location, and then 20 miles away could be project B, and the person be performing the same tasks, but the trade classifications are called something completely different with different pay rates and fringes associated with it. So you have to be very specific with it in this state.
Yeah, that sounds very hard to make sure that you're making sure that everything is right for every single project all the time.
In the same state. In the
Yeah.
same state. So, yes.
So going from there, obviously you then have to report this, and obviously weekly reporting is a major hurdle. Can you explain the specific certified payroll and statement of compliance requirements that contractors must submit to awarding authorities in the state?
Sure. So in the state of Massachusetts, they are unique in that they have to report, and they don't report specifically and only to their client, the prime contractor. What happens is they report directly to the state agency. So they accept first class certified mail, electronic mail, but it needs to come straight from the subcontractor to the agency. A lot of times, like on federal projects, the labor reports will and documentation will go to the prime, and then the prime gathers it all together and then sends it over to the agency. That's not how this state works. It goes directly there. Also, they have their own reporting nuances on their labor reports, which is quite different than at the federal level. So making sure that you have all that information filled out properly is key in this particular state.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of nuances. So if there is a payroll error that slips through the cracks and makes it through, or someone drops the ball and doesn't submit, what are the financial and the legal consequences that a project can face in Massachusetts?
Sure. So there's a standard, such as fines and penalties, debarment, so on and so forth. But in this state, they have back wage liability, and there's a formula with that. They also have something called treble damages, which means triple the damages, which is quite expensive because it is sheer definition 3 times what the original damages were. And then they also have the attorney general that does a lot of enforcement. They actively enforce the compliance on these projects. And that's something that's unique to this particular state.
Wow, that's major. Oof. So I know it's time for our podcast would you rather question. So would you rather have a personal chef who cooks every single meal perfectly to your taste, or a live-in house cleaner who keeps everything spotless 24/7?
Chef. Absolutely. Chef. I don't mind cleaning. I am not interested in cooking, but I am in eating, just not the actual making.
Yeah. I don't know what I would choose there. I've gotten very into cooking recently. My family was very surprised. But now they're like, "Oh yeah, can you cook dinner tonight? Can you cook dinner tonight?"
Yeah. I mean, I see that it brings people happiness and joy, and I'm happy for them. I've just never achieved that with cooking. So therefore, I would just choose a chef. I could watch them enjoy what they're doing, but I don't have to do it myself.
Yes, exactly. Okay, then so to wrap up this episode, for a general contractor taking on a new public building project in Massachusetts, what is your top tip for keeping the entire team and subcontractors audit ready and compliant no matter what?
I would say Massachusetts has definitely earned the reputation for being quite active and closely monitoring their public construction projects. So I would say for general contractors to treat their prevailing wage projects like a project management task rather than a payroll function. Yes, it involves payroll, but it really needs to be managed, and it needs to be managed by somebody that can actually make things happen. That would be my top tip. Massachusetts is a wonderful state in the prevailing wage world because they're so adamant about what they want you to do. And then you add in some place like Boston, and they're even more nuanced. It makes working in the state in the public space very unappealing for the newcomer. But once you figure it out, it's pretty formulaic. So
That definitely makes sense. So thank you, Heather, so much for joining us. And for everybody listening, if you like the podcast, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube or, as always, your preferred podcasting platform. And if you're active in this space and you want to surround yourself with people who actually get it, head over to our website to join our member portal, an exclusive community for professionals navigating these exact same waters. Have a great day.